Welcome everybody to the free training. We're going to jump into this thing. I'm going to coach you up on some things. Before I get into some of the coaching, I want to give you a little background on what is Freeborn Neck Protocol. I'm not going to get into all the stories of how we got here, but just give you a quick snapshot. I've been working on these techniques literally my entire life. I grew up in chronic pain as a kid, and I've had to be very consciously aware of how my body operates and works. Really starting in high school when I figured out that how I move around matters. I mean, heck, grade school, I figured some of this stuff out. How I move around matters. So Freeborn Neck Protocol is not just exercises. It is a way of moving. It's a way of re-engineering how you behave, because ultimately what happens is we have unconscious patterning that takes over how our bodies operate. And if we do things the right way, and I see Trish, you're kind of posturing up over on me over here, right? Even just talking about some of the stuff, because this is how this stuff works. When we do, I won't say if, when we do the things the right way, meaning we're doing the exercises as we should do the exercises consistently every day, we are striking the poses Kaizen style, and I'm going to touch on that during the presentation, but this is where we're going to be consciously striking poses a few times an hour, just for a couple seconds. It's the Kaizen principle of movement that really ingrains deep into the PMRF of the brain, which is where we regulate posture. And considering all roads lead to the neck, and that's what we are doing here is we're talking about this thing. This is the ligamentum nuchae. I have to stop myself as I say it, because for the last few years I've been calling it the ligamentum nucha, in part because there's nucha chiropractors and they work on the atlas right here. All right, and it looks kind of like nucha, but the official way you pronounce it is nuchae. So I'm changing how I say the word. This is the secret weapon and the missing link of the human species. This is the thing I accidentally discovered in my body in 2018 when I was dealing with chronic neuropathy down my right arm, and I had a massive shoulder injury that I was healing from 3 years prior. And as I was developing these responses to those issues, and then I had other issues in my body since I was a kid, what I found in 2018 was that this thing came out of my neck and I had no idea it was even there. It was literally, it happened in a moment. It happened, this thing unleashed. I call it, so this is why you'll see in our taglines, unleashing primal spinal intelligence, because this humongous, and if you can type, am I exaggerating? Is that humongous? Can you guys see how big that thing is? This is massive. This is easily the largest ligament in the body, and it doesn't stop at C7. Well, technically it does. The ligamentum nuchae stops at C7. It goes from the back of the skull. It attaches the tip of every spinous process of the cervical spine, and it goes all the way to your tailbone via the ligamentum supraspinale, or the supraspinous ligament. The Western term for ligamentum nuchae is nuchal ligament. So what happens with the human body is because we are seated all the time, right? How often are you sitting? It's ridiculous how much we sit. We're sitting all the time. We might get up and move around a little bit, but we come right back to being seated. Because of being seated and modern footwear, big, thick footwear, squishy shoes with the air or gel or whatever, this turns off and is devolving this ligament from functionality out of our body. Dr. Ligamentum. Dr. Lieberman from Harvard University, he's about the only person I found who has been speaking about the nuchal ligament with any in-depth, thought. And what he's found is that when in what he's done in his career is he has studied indigenous tribes across the earth. These indigenous tribes are literally living like human beings are supposed to live. They are hunting and gathering. They're fighting and flighting. They're caring for the village. You know, and they're barefoot, or maybe they've got like a piece of leather at the bottom of their foot. So they have very simple footwear at best, but they're moving all the time. They're not sitting in classrooms. They're not sitting on Swiss balls like I am right now. They're not sitting on sofas. They're not sitting in a car. They are moving around. And what he's found, he's a geneticist at Harvard. What Dr. Lieberman found is that these indigenous people have functional nuchal ligaments, like their ligamentum nuchae works, but ours is not working. And when it works, everything in the body works differently. Everything in the body works differently. We're talking the entire musculoskeletal system starts to plug in differently. If you can see my posters back here, we've got the 5 kinetic chains, we've got the deep longitudinal chain, we've got the lateral, we've got the intrinsic, and the intrinsic is really the chain that we are going to be integrating in with this nuchal ligament from the get-go, from the jump. We've got the posterior chain and we've got the anterior chain. These 5 kinetic chains, every one of them, if you start at the toes, right? If you start at the feet and you go all the way up, and whatever kinetic chain you're talking about, and technically the intrinsic kinetic chain starts at your pelvic floor, it doesn't start at the toes. But they all wind up, and they wind up at the back of our neck. They wind up at the back of our skull. And so this is why we say all roads lead to the neck. All of these kinetic chains lead to the neck. When the ligamentum nuchae is not working, we don't have an anchor at the top of our head that is allowing for stabilities all the way up these chains. Does that make sense? And I know I can't see most of you. I can see Trish, but can you picture how this thing at the back of our head, if you can see mine, can you see that popping out there?
Yes, very definitely.
Right? That was not sticking out of my head until 2018. And I started doing some exercises and I was working on some stuff, and I'm a geek for this stuff, you guys. I mean, so I'm constantly involved with listening to how my body works, and but I didn't have a choice because I grew up in some pain. This was one of my greatest pains, was this wrist. This was responsible for about a decade of sleepless nights and waking up in tears. And the range of motion of my wrist and hand was like this when I was in my mid-20s. Every morning I woke up, I had to like slowly try to open my fingers and bend my wrist back. And when the doctor decided that he could do a surgery on it, I said, "Is that going to help the pain?" And he literally laughed at me out loud. He laughs at me and he goes, "It's probably going to make the pain worse." At that moment, I knew nobody cared more about my pain than me. So I had to figure this out. It took me about 6 months to get off the painkillers that I was addicted to. And it took me about 2 years to open up the functional range of motion of my hand and wrist again. This is all about 1% improvement a day. This is it, incremental, tiny little improvements. Think about ultimately where you want to be, and then realize that literally it's just these small, little, tiny little incremental steps we have to take every day. We turn these into rituals, we turn these into patterns. If you can speak or DM, have you guys seen me put this exercise pattern out there on social media? If you're in the group, I have a little coaching session in the group on this pattern. This is the Northern Star. This is the 1A exercise of every exercise that we have in our protocols. This is where I start everybody. The vast majority of people get a beneficial response from this exercise. We call it the Northern Star. This pattern is Well, there's about 13 super small specific cues in this pattern that are essential to do the pattern properly. There's modifications and things that you're going to need to do to make it work potentially for you. But in this pattern here, what we're activating is we're activating the nuchal ligament at the back of the head. We've got this force of reaching, the elbows are weaponized and reaching this way. I've driven my body to the north. The north is my head. So I've driven my body this way. So the skin on my upper back is being pulled down my back. That's crucial. If we don't get the skin pulled down the back, we're not going to get the right fascia integration up into the cervical region to get the nuchal ligament to wake up. I've got my shoulders working towards the hips, not the floor, hips. I've got my scapula wide across the back and activating my serratus anterior, because the serratus anterior muscle is the counterforce muscle to all of these muscles, which are all connected to the nuchal ligament. Do any of you ever have issues with your upper traps? The upper trap,
yeah,
right? They're one of the most commonly complained about muscles in the body. People commonly are like, man, my upper traps are killing me. We've got the splenius capitis. This comes out to the mastoid region of your head. Out here, it goes down into your neck. We've got the rhomboid minor, and we've got the serratus posterior superior. It's a little harder to see on this image, but that goes up. They all attach to the nuchal ligament. Now, it doesn't mean that these are the only muscles affected by the nuchal ligament. It just means that these are the only muscles touching the nuchal ligament, attached to the nuchal ligament. Every single muscle in your body is affected by the nuchal ligament because it's a chain reaction. We've all heard, you know, the foot bone's connected to the ankle bone, is connected to the shin bone, is connected to the knee bone. And it's true. We have fascial lines. We have things that literally connect. And really the magic of this stuff working is in the hands, and it's in the toes. It's in the feet. Because when I can get my hands, this is a grip that I want everybody to really understand. This is called the core fist. This is where I'm going to bring my, and if you can, if you're not driving, tab, right? If you can practice this, it would be like if you snapped, right? Your middle finger is down here in the pad of your thumb. You want to reach that middle finger as low as you can on your pad, and then your pointer finger and your ring finger are going to overlap on top of that. And so now I'm sort of in this hang loose position. Now, if I was going to strike somebody, I would fist it up and have my pinky go over the top, and I'd have my thumb wrap around, and now I have a firm striking. This is how I would strike if I were still getting in stupid fights like I did when I was in my 20s, which I don't do anymore, but I wouldn't punch anybody like this ever again if I was going to get into fisticuffs. I would go here, core fist. This is how I walk. When I go for a walk, I don't have a tight core fist, but I just have like a loose hang loose. This activates the fascia network into all the way to the tips of your fingers. This does not. This activates your fascia line all the way out to your hands. This does not. So I'm either here. What you'll find with the protocols, for those of you who dive in and decide to, you know, really thoroughly work all of our protocols, your hands are going to be commonly in this position here, or you're going to be wrapped down into the core fist. Our shoulders have 16,000 angles that they will move into, separated by 1 degree. As we start moving our 5 points of contact around, and when I go slow like that, I'm trying to emphasize it. These are critical pieces of understanding. We've got 5 points of contact. We've got the legs, we've got the arms, We've got the head. The head is the 5th point of contact. The back of the head is the navigation control center of our entire body. If somebody tells you to keep your chin up, it's a trap. Don't do it. Because the moment you lose your head position and your chin tilts, you get into this, it disengages the nuchal ligament. The nuchal ligament and the cervical spine are sort of like a bow of a bow and arrow. Okay. Here's so you can picture this. Right? Here's the cervical spine, right? Here's the nuchal ligament. The outside edge of the nuchal ligament, that's the piece that you can see sticking out the back of my head when I turn around and showcase my neck a little bit. The outside edge is known as the rope or the cord. And then this literally attaches to every tip of each spinous process in the cervical spine. And then here you can see the interspinous ligament. The olive color is the ligamentum flava. So we have more ligaments that go in. And then when you get deeper into the neck, there's all sorts of tinier, smaller ligaments. It's sort of like a bow and arrow, or the bow anyway. Let me explain this, right? So here's the cervical spine. This would be a functional cervical spine because the ligamentum nucha, we're gonna say that this string here is the rope or the cord. That's the part sticking out of my neck. This is a strung bow. Look how the cervical spine has this really nice bow to it, and it's functional. Boom, right? I can shoot an arrow from this thing. It's a tool. If I de-string the bow, look what happens to the bow. It straightens and it actually curves the wrong, well, I won't say the wrong way, but it curves this way. How many people do you know, and maybe you're some of them, how many people do you know will say they have a forward cervical curve? They don't have their proper extension curve of their cervical spine. They're missing that. That's a problem. And then their chiropractor or their physical therapist or whomever would tell them that they should be doing some sort of back, cervical back extension. Like, right, bending your neck back. We have to get your cervical, we have to get you an extension curve, John. This is what happened to me in 2005. Hey, John, we need to give you an extension curve. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit you, what I did is mine was very much like this, but instead of being supine, my chiropractor at that time had me sit in a chair that was angled about like that. And then he bent my head backward like this. And then he put a strap over my forehead and he started to dangle like 10 pounds down here. And then I said, because I'm a tough guy in those days. So I said, put more weight on there. So he had like 20 pounds, 30 pounds. And I would sit there for about 30 minutes with these weights. And I would just get into a meditative state. It was literally like the back of my head was touching the bra line almost of the back of it was ridiculous. And the whole time it was like I was getting these alerts in my brain that said, don't do this. This doesn't make sense. Don't do it. But then consciously I said, but the chiro told me to do it. And I'm not here to bash chiros. I'm just here to recommend. I don't see why this is a thing. Like we should be way beyond this. This turns off this. Can you picture that? So when I uprise, right, is sort of how we, there's an uprising. We need an uprising at the back of the head. I don't want you walking around like with your chin ways overly tucked into your neck, because the chin tuck, which is commonly given in physical therapy or by chiropractors, is bad news. That exercise is bad news. It's not taught right. We don't want to just sit there and tuck our chin and tuck our chin. We want to have a fully integrated, full body experience that moves us into what could look like a chin tuck, like the Northern Star ends up looking. Hey, and some of you folks are going to need like a 1-inch pillow or a 2-inch pillow or some sort of riser at your head. You may not have the mobility to get your head all the way to the floor, and that's wonderful. You don't need to, because we can always modify position. But when I get into this pose here, and we have, that's just the starter pose. Within our course, we've got program A, which has 9 patterns that we get into in great detail. We have program B that takes us deeper, and much like an infant, where an infant is born. An infant's born and they're so small that you have to support their head with your hand. They don't have the ability to support their head. And it's like, oh my gosh, look how they smell like a baby. Oh my goodness, they smell. That baby smell is alkalinity, by the way. That is, babies are born with massive amounts of alkalinity. So they smell like a baby. At any rate, so we have to support their head. And so either we're supporting their head when we're holding on to them, or we have to lie them down on their back and allow them to rest. And so their little arms and their little legs are gaga-gooing up in the air. And then, or we're picking them back up again. It's in those first weeks that they are activating and turning on their nuchal ligaments. They're teaching this thing to work, amongst other ligaments that are super important, but this is the big kahuna. So what happens is 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on the kid, maybe a month, but all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, little Johnny, he doesn't need to have his head supported anymore. Look at him. He can support his own head. He's so strong. And it's a milestone of the infant. And at that point forward, all consideration of what's going on with the development of the neck for that human being is out the window. Nobody even thinks about it anymore. We take for granted that little kid is going to learn how to roll over, do some little push-ups. They're going to get up on their hands and knees. They're going to start crawling around. They're going to be able to stand up. They're going to run. They're going to walk. They're going to climb. They're going to play sports. They're going to, do all sorts of things. They're going to jump out of airplanes. They're going to do this thing. And then at some point in somebody's life, something happens. Maybe it's a fall. Maybe it's a car accident. Maybe it's, you name it. There's a gazillion stories out there. And now all of a sudden there's pain. And even then, you call the chiro, you call the PT, you call somebody up, and nobody's going to tell you that this is the key. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. I am. This is the key. This is the secret weapon and the missing link of the human species. When this thing works, not only does it get your entire musculoskeletal system to begin communicating better, considering your entire nervous system, because the brain is here, right? Your entire nervous system is traveling through this little tunnel called your neck. So when we are activating this thing and keeping it activated, it opens up space in the neck. It literally decompresses the vertebra in your neck. It opens up space in your neck. So now all of the nervous system signaling gets better throughout your entire body, particularly the vagus nerve, which there's one primary root on the left side. There's another vagus root. They go right down here on the sides of the neck. The one on the left goes all the way into your organs, down in your guts, and then has branches that go into your feet. We've had people just from becoming proficient at the Northern Star exercise go from having decades of neuropathy in their legs to no neuropathy in their legs in literally minutes. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, and I don't want to promise home run shots for every single person on here, but we've had a lot of home run shots. Now, once in a blue moon, somebody doesn't, like this exercise doesn't feel right for somebody. So what we have to do is get creative. We have to get creative. This is all about creativity. Like the protocols, and I'm going to open this up for questions in about 10 minutes. I might even open up for questions sooner. Let me do this. I'm going to digress from the coaching up, or excuse me, from the sort of background. Why is this important? What is this thing? What I want you each to do is I want you to think about the back of your head right now. And I can see Trish. I can't see anybody else, but what I just want you to do is I want you to observe yourself as you're seated. Is it safe to say you're all seated? I'm imagining so.
I am.
What are you doing as you're seated? Right? People are like, they might be over here with this. They might be, kind of their butt tucked under. They're sitting back in their chair. They might be on their sofa, and now they're leaning up against the edge of the sofa. They might be, I don't know, you name it. There's a million different types of little positions people hold. And I'm not here to, there we go, Alan. Oh, I can't hear you. All of a sudden you're muted or something, Alan.
I wanted to see, I'm sitting on one of those.
Oh, okay. It's like a Swiss ball chair.
Yeah.
All right.
Sitting on yeah.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, but I want you to think about hello. What I want you to think about, what are you doing? Because this is where the rubber hits the road. So what you'll see emphasized, if you become more and more familiar with Freeborn Neck Protocol and what we're teaching here, there's 3 things everybody's taught. Well, there's 3 overriding aspects to the protocols. 1, we need to do the work every day. So we need to do these exercises. Freeborn Neck Protocol, the online course, we're now calling it the 1.0, because on March 1st, we're launching, and you all are the first people to know of this. Nobody else has heard this yet. This is all brand new we're announcing it today. March 1st, we're launching Freeborn Neck Protocol 2.0. 1.0 was launched the summer of 2021, and it's great. It's got, I think, the 21 key exercises that people really need to dive into to unleash their primal spinal intelligence. And cool. I just got a message from somebody who started working the protocols the other day. She's like, I'm feeling much better. Sorry, I got distracted just for a quick second. So what we're doing with 2.0, which is coming out March 1st, is we are adding a number of different movement patterns that I have since 2021 found to be very key in the teachings, because I've been working with countless people since then, one-on-one. In many cases, we've had a lot of people get the course. And so I'm getting feedback from course owners. I'm getting, I have direct feedback from my one-on-one clients. So we're beefing up the course. We're adding a number of new exercises into the course. And we're going to create a number of new flows in the course. And sorry, Johanna's messaging me and I can't read it. Yes, I'm going to get back to the chair coaching. Thank you. You can just speak to me directly. Thanks. All right. So I'm going to get back to the chair coaching because Johanna is the person that takes me away from my tangents. If you guys listen to tangents, if you listen in tangent form, I commonly go into tangents. So I'm going to come right back to staying on course here a little bit. So think about how you're seated right now. I want you to think about 2 very key parts here. I want you to think about your rib cage and your skull. If your rib cage drops, the head tends to do this. You see how we've got like 2 circles here? right? So if the rib cage rolls forward, the head rolls back. Oh, come on, lift it up. I want each of you right now. I want you to be like kind of peacocky, like a peacock, right? Strutting, right? There's a little bit of a peacock, like puffed up chest thing, right? There's the proudest lion in the jungle thing, right? There's this like, you know, I like to say a lot, badass. Like you're kind of like you're like if you're gonna be a badass, you know, you might sort of like expand your chest a little bit, and you're like, man, I'm ready. Notice when you lift up your chest, think about the back of your head getting closer to the ceiling. Oh, not the chin, not the chin, not the chin. Michelle, right? Right. Go with it. Go. Stay with it, Michelle. I'm pointing. I'm calling you out a little bit. Thanks for coming on the screen. Up the chest, and then make the back of the head go to the ceiling. There you go, Trish. Yes. Trish, can you feel almost like a little stretchy feeling at the back of your neck? That's your ligamentum nuchae. Can you feel it stick out? Most people aren't going to necessarily feel, you were on mute, right?
No, not really.
Most people aren't going to necessarily feel it stick out. Most people, when they touch the back of their neck, right on the spine, they have like a little valley on their neck where the muscles on the side stick out farther. So here's my advice is when you are at your desk working, like most of us are probably spending ample time seated and working, what I want you to begin doing Kaizen style, which Kaizen is the second mode of our coaching program, right? Number one is we do the exercises every day. We get into these little exercises, and I'm talking 10 or 15 minutes a day of doing the work. Number two, every 10 to 15 minutes while we're awake, we're going to strike a posture pose. If I'm standing, I can strike a posture pose standing. I could be seated and strike a posture pose. You don't even have to get up to be productive. I don't necessarily expect people to sit around all day long with this uprising at the back of their head and this puffed up chest, and they sort of robotically never come out of that. I still want you to be a human being and, be your emotional, physical self. But every 10 or 15 minutes, we want to just sort of think this. Don't just puff up your chest. Think about expanding your rib cage all the way around. So and to do that, it's going to be like a puff, puff inhale. It's going to be sort of like a, and now don't get dizzy on me, right? Make sure you don't hold your breath too long, but there's almost a breath holding thing that can happen as we go, I want to think about expanding my back of my ribs. Most people can find how they can expand the front of their ribs. I want you thinking about the back of your rib cage expanding. Can you guys feel that? Think about the ribs that exist below the bra line in your back, those in particular. The lower back of the ribs. That's the expansion, 360 all the way around. And then have your hands, not necessarily in core fist, but I want to just point out core fist again. But have your hands maybe on your thighs. Right? Or maybe your hands are going to go like on the table in front of you. And notice how when you touch hey, you guys, when the hands, we're going to open up to questions in 2 minutes. I'm going to stay on schedule. When the hands touch the body, the hands teach the body. Every time. So if I'm habitually kind of the arm cross guy or the hands on hips guy, I mean, even when I put my hands sort of, lack of consciousness on my hips, I almost go into this poor slouchy posture position. Or I can put my hands on my chest. I can put my hands on my legs. I put my hands on my head. And I start creating, my neck feels like one long piece. I want to read this. I can't feel the insertion or the two groups of muscles left to right. Okay. That to me sounds like a good thing. Is that a good thing, Isabel? You feel how that's, there's like, it's right up and down the spine. It feels almost like there's this like long, it's stiff. It could feel stiff. So as you're going into this length, if stiff means that it's too stiff, then ease up on how much intensity you use. I'm going to talk about intention and intention, which are two different things. And I'm going to talk about yeses and no signals. I'm going to do these real quick and then open this up to questions because we're supposed to start questions right now. But since Isabella brought up what she's noticing, intention. When we're doing the work, when we're doing these exercises, we are going to be intentional with, spelled with the T-I-O-N. So we are going to be focused and, purposeful, and we're going to be on it. We're not just whimsically on a, treadmill, not thinking about what we're doing. We're thinking. And then we are in tension with an S-I-O-N. So we are in tension. We are holding these slight little isometric ninja-like forces. So we're in tension and we're in tension. Now, when you're doing the movements and you got the 5 points of contact, right? We got 3 planes. And by the way, everything I'm throwing at you is innate in your primal brain. So when you do the exercises and you strike the Kaizen poses, it unleashes all this knowledge that's stored in our ancestry. It unleashes it. So people go from thinking, oh my gosh, this movement has 13 cues. What am I supposed to do with this movement? Or, any of our other exercises are all thought-provoking. However, it goes from complex to then become simple, and you're like, oh, this is easy. When I get into this pose, yeah, boom, I just feel all these things turn on. I feel them because you're waking up the neurology of how your body operates. And then we want to go back to complex, and that's where we get into deeper exercises, newer patterns. You become extremely intuitive with understanding how to take these protocols and make them your own, because every single one of y'all has a unique story. And so the story is what matters, and usually that's where it starts. So, some of you invariably will likely want to work one-on-one with me. Some of you, I would like to think every one of you is going to find a value in our online course 1.0, and then you'll automatically get 2.0 when it comes out in March. But ultimately it comes down to your story. Any of this stuff, like you're taking these protocols, they're not cookie cutters. You're taking these protocols and you're learning how to make these work for you. Yes and no signals, real quick on the yes and no signals. Johanna's like Q&A time. Yes and no signals. When you're actively doing one of the exercises, or maybe when you're observing yourself consciously in life, when you're seated or walking or doing something, if you're doing an exercise and what you're doing feels a little aggressive, like, oh, it's a little stiff. I feel it, but maybe that's a little too stiff, or maybe it's a good stiff. But it should be like, yes, this feels okay. Yes, this makes sense. Yes, this feels productive. Yes, this feels worthwhile. If at any point your body goes, John, I don't know, this is maybe a no, like, no, this isn't okay. This is too aggressive. No, this hurts. Some no signals are super obvious. Some yes signals are super obvious. People will get into the poses of like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. Like they'll feel like good almost right away. Then there's the gray area in between. So every day we just get 1% better at listening to what our body is telling us, because your body is going to tell you everything you need to know. And with that, I'm going to ask that if you have any questions, let's throw them out there right now. You can just unmute yourself and ask a question. Or if you want to type a question, I'm going to read one here. I tried the Northern Star this morning, but it felt slightly dizzy. I stopped doing it. I got a no signal. There you go. I will try again this evening. So, Amisha, am I saying your name correctly, by the way? Amisha, is that correct? So what that is okay, or you can feel free to raise your virtual hand. Johanna wants me to let you know, or she'd let you all know. So you got a no signal. Yes, you likely maybe got a little too aggressive with it. So just back down slightly, right? Just move away from how intense it was. Maybe depending on your posture, I don't know what your posture is looking like or what your thoracic spine is looking like. Maybe you need to have like a 1 inch or 2 inch pillow under your head while you're in the Northern Star to take a little bit of pressure off of trying to reach all the way to the floor. Those are the couple things, but you know what I see people do is when they're bringing tension into the game, sometimes they're like, well, if a little bit of tension's good, maybe way more tension's better. Awesome, trying it with a pillow tonight, Amisha. So then they're like, maybe more intensity is better, right? I'm gonna fix this 50-year-old neck issue I've had. I'm gonna fix it right this second, right? So they go too aggressively. So yeah, you want to find that there's this little window of productivity when it comes to intensity. If I use too much intensity, force will negate. If I don't use enough intensity, I'm not going to create enough stimulus to create a response. What other questions?
So I have a question. This
Please.
is Alan. So I have been that for several years. When chiropractors have taken x-rays and things, I'm told I have a military neck.
Yep.
Very straight. Okay.
Me too.
You too. Okay. So, you know, and I have intermittently, you know, watched some of your posts and different things, and I'm intrigued. I am. I have, it's interesting, on Mondays, I participate in a meditation breath work workshop that's sponsored by my company.
Cool.
And yeah, it's really cool. And so it's at noon. So for an hour, I lay down on my yoga mat and we go through this guided breath work meditation of, you know, deep breath and expanding the chest. And when you were saying about the back, it's interesting because I had that thought that, you know, you got to breathe into your back as well. And he's never said it. And it was just when you said it, you know, so I understand. And the breathing is really, really important. That I get. So the neck to the lower back, like L4, 5 in that area, and your coccyx in that area. Help me to understand by doing this. I know it's going to be beneficial. I get that. Help me to understand, or maybe this is another bit, you know.
No, this is
so I got a
great question.
Yeah. So how this can help that? I fell 2 years ago and ruptured L3, 4, and 5 or whatever. Okay. And I never went through, I just using an inversion table, exercise in the chiropractor. I'm fine. I'm not 100%. I have pain down there, but I walk, I just sitting bothers me. That's why I use that pillow. The chiropractor gave me that pillow, that whatever you call it. I call it a wobble seat.
Yeah.
And it does help because you want to get that fluid flowing through the spine.
Yep.
And I totally know that what you're talking about is going to help a lot. So I want to learn and how that can benefit my lower back.
So the lower back, let me explain it this way. The lumbar spine and the cervical spine are reflections of each other, in the sense that the lumbopelvic structure down below and the upper quarter, the shoulder complex with the cervical spine, they're designed very similarly to each other. So, for example, the hips, we have the ilium bones, the big hip bones, the flat bones, they're like a plated bone. Up here, we've got the scapula and the shoulder blades, which are a big plated bone. In the lower body, we have the femur bone coming out of the pelvis. In the upper body, we've got the humerus bones coming out of the shoulder complex. In the lower body, we have the lumbar spine coming out of the pelvis, which is supposed to be an extension curve. And we have the cervical spine coming out of the upper quarter, out of the shoulder complex, which is supposed to be an extension curve. The similarity, we have the weight of the body, right, of the upper body. The weight of the upper body is at the front of this lumbar spine down below. And the weight of the head is at the front of the cervical spine up above. Like, the similarities are very, they're there. They're in, but the correlations happen. So when we have things that are lacking stability up top in certain ways relative to these top structures, we're going to see these things begin to mirror down below. Or maybe it's chicken and egg. It's like, which one is causing it? Alan, what happens is when we have our focus at the neck, when we put our focus at the fifth point of contact, and we just say we get grounded here, we get grounded in this type of a pose or any of the other 21 exercises that are in the primary 1.0 course and the other exercises coming out in the 2.0 course. When we begin to strengthen cohesively our body from this place up here in the cervical spine, everything below it starts to plug in and works more intelligently. And like, I'm working with a guy right now out in Arizona who came to me. He's a advanced black belt in karate and in jiu-jitsu and owns a dojo, and he's an amazing athlete, but his back has been a mess for years from all sorts of trauma in his body. And he's doing awesome with these protocols, and he's still rolling, and he's still doing karate. And so a big piece of this, my man, is going to be doing the work, meaning doing the exercises and connecting your back of your head down to your lower back, and becoming more and more aware of your daily patterning, right? Like, how are you walking? How are you sitting? How are you, doing things? Are you going into relief positions with frequency? Because ultimately, we need to take whatever we're doing in the gym, whatever our exercises are, that stuff needs to be into real life ASAP. Does that make sense, Alan?
Yes, definitely.
All right, man. Sweet. Okay, Isabel has a question that Johanna is alerting me to. I'm going to go up and read it. As a former gymnast, I'm very flexible, but due to severe stress, back injury as a child, I'm not sure what AO means, but my lower back has been giving me problems for a long time. I got diagnosed with axial spondylitis a while ago. Now I feel my upper and lower back that are not that flexible anymore, and my neck hurts every morning. Should I focus on the lower back or neck first? I think that the neck leads the charge with anything that we're doing. If we would have had this conversation back in 2017, I would have said differently, because in the corrective exercise industry, we're all taught to really focus on the core, this deep abdominal wall piece of the body. And this is where we focus from. And what I found over the years of coaching people and working with people is if somebody came in with an injury like you're talking about, where your low back is maybe the bigger issue, and Alan is the same way, we would start with, you know, these exercises that are going to strengthen the transversus abdominis, and we're going to get into the SI joint, and we're going to do these things, we're going to do these things, and it would be productive, the thing that would happen is eventually in working with that client, maybe the third session or fourth session or however many sessions it would take, to now we're putting more focus on how, like, what they're doing up with their neck. Every time we started putting more focus on the neck, everything else in the body responded. Like it was like a blast from the plateau that they were at, right? So if they came in, we started working on the low back, they'd make some improvements, and then they'd be like here, and then we would bring the back into the neck into play, and then they would go like this. So what I found over the years is that if you start at the neck, everything else starts to respond in kind. So I would still, at the very least, start with the Northern Star and start with what's in Program A. Program A, and here, you know, we call it the neck protocol because my ego loves to say it. I'm the only one on earth talking about this thing in the way I'm talking about this thing. Nobody else is. So that's why it's the neck protocol. But even in Program 1, we have all sorts of exercises that go right to your hips. We go right to the SI joint. We go right to the hips. We go right to the lumbar spine. Really, we could have called this course, I feel like, am I yelling? We could have called this course, instead of calling it Freeborn Neck Protocol, this course could be called Freeborn Hips and Spine Protocol, Hips and Neck Protocol. This literally encompasses the entire spine from top to bottom. Program A is going to talk to your low back right away, you know. And so for me to even say that we're starting at the neck first, that's really a misdirection. It's not really true, because we're starting at the entire darn spine first. But since the neck is the top of this totem pole and my head is at the top of it, and you know, this guy needs to be anchored. Like if I want to really get to the hips and to the low back, I need to get my neck grounded and get my head grounded intelligently to reach the pelvis. Does that make sense, Isabel? And it's your son with the vaccine injury. Big hugs for you and your son.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate your time and your answer, and all this information that you're sharing with us so graciously. Thank you very much.
Hey, pleasure's all mine. All right, we are at 3:57, and I told myself we're wrapping this thing up at 4. Anybody have a question that they wanted to make sure they got in, or are we good for one last question? Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Hey, thank you all. I want to let you know what we're going to send to you is a little thank you email for being here. We're going to send you the link to this video. If you want to keep this and go back and review it again, if you want to keep it, you can always download it to your computer if you want to keep it. It will be deleted off the Zoom cloud. So the link that we send you is, we're probably going to delete that link in 7 days or so. All right, so there's a window of time that you can access this recording. Again, if you want to download it, go for it. We have Freeborn Neck Protocol 1.0, and now we're launching 2.0 in March 1st. When we launch 2.0, we're going to be raising the price. We don't know exactly to what yet, but the price is going to go up. It's currently priced at $197 for 1.0. Anybody who owns 1.0 is going to get 2.0. And we're changing platforms. We're going from a teachable platform to a different platform altogether. So we're making a number of changes, but anybody who has 1.0 is going to get 2.0. And you can probably imagine in a couple years from now, we're going to launch an FNP 3.0 because I'm always making things streamlined, and anybody who's in is going to always get the upgrades. And every upgrade we have, we're going to raise the prices. And any videos to it. And yeah, anything we're adding into it, you always get the upgrades to the course. So you're going to all have the option if you want to get into the Freeborn Neck Protocol right now and get the online course, which is $197. You're going to be able to get it for $147. So we're going to give a 25% discount if you want to jump on it right now. And that discount is going to be good through tomorrow evening. So if you want to jump on it and get the course in, Johanna just dropped a link in the notes, and we will also be emailing you that link too. But you can grab the course and get it, at a discounted rate before we launch 2.0 and raise the prices. And again, you'll get 2.0. You're all amazing. Oh, great point. There's a code. You need the code FNP 234 to get that $50 discount on. I will save the chat. Oh, you guys can save the chat. How do we save the chat? Is it the 3 dots? So if you click those 3 dots at the bottom of the chat, you can click save chat. That way you'll have that link that you can get right away. You're all amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you for jumping on. Feel free to, if you're not in the FNP group on Facebook yet, please get in there. If you haven't downloaded the ebook, backbonesecrets.com, please get the ebook. What else? Remember, it's about 1% progressive improvement a day. In your body is telling you what you need to know to get to your low back, to get to your shoulder, to get to your foot. But every one of these comes from the neck. Every one of these things that we could work on comes from the neck. All right, peace, love, I'm a dove, you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, brother.
All right.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you to Joanna too.
Bye.